Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. And today we'll be talking about the Keanu Reeves movie Constantine. And I gotta admit, this was kind of like a sleeper hit for a lot of people, but like I already from the jump really liked this movie. Uh, Although I do understand some people's misgivings about it at the time, but I'm pretty sure it became like a cult classic. One of those cult classics that over time people it's kind of like Batman Forever. It's kind of like over time people's like I have fun watching it. It's like I can turn it on and it's like and just like it's a good popcorn movie. Uh, but I always liked it from the jump. So like it never bothered me. None of the usual stuff that kind of like people were bothered by. Sorry, gonna adjust my mic. Uh, but yeah, the movie begins where this like scavenger kind of finds in Mexico finds the spear of destiny, the blade that pierced Christ's body on the cross. And it's like that wasn't Rome. It was wrapped in like a Nazi flag, and I'm thinking like, of course, historically, it's been uh, stories about how like Hitler had a fascination with the occult. So somehow, the Nazis found the spirit of destiny, and you would think it would have been, since it's a Roman spear by a Roman soldier who pierced Christ's body, it would be in Rome, not across the ocean into Mexico. So don't know how that even happened. There's no backstory on that. That's the one thing that was kind of glaringly obvious. That's kind of like, okay, it made no sense for like this artifact to be somewhere across the globe altogether. But anyway, the scavenger became possessed and started to walk uh, towards the city, or at least towards a specific destination, despite being hit by a car and still getting up and continuing on. Then you meet John Constantine, played by Keanu Reeves. And he is pulling a soldier demon out from a little girl's body who's trying to come into the earthly plane. And there's like a funny little scene where it's like, it was not only funny because like Shia LaBeouf is in this movie too. It's like a very young Shia LaBeouf. Uh, uh, Before his no days. Uh, he plays as Chaz Kramer, and of course, Chaz Kramer in the comics, DC Comics, is John Constantine's usual primary driver because John Constantine doesn't like to drive himself anywhere. Uh, uh, Chain smoking John Constantine, and of course, in this version, he's not British. And of course, I did not know at that time because I was very young. It's 2005. I didn't know at the time that John Constantine was British. I mean, I probably found out a little bit after the movie, but he's supposed to be British and bisexual, and of course, they didn't really placate to uh, the actual oh, what's the word? Like they didn't make it accurate, comic book accurate. But I don't think it was Constantine at the time was kind of low tier as far as like the spectrum of DC heroes. So of course they at the time had liberty to just tell Constantine the way they wanted to do it at the time. And of course, there's also during a time where it's like you got like movies like Elektra and like it's just like comic book movies in general at the time was not look favorable on in Hollywood. This is like 3 years prior to Iron Man, mind you. So even like Robert Downey Jr. wasn't on the straight and narrow yet to get that role. So it was like a tumultuous time. So, but despite everything, like uh, uh, they told Constantine, in their way, which is still like a pretty good way. But after a while, we get Constantine again, but played by Matt Ryan, who's done a phenomenal job as a character. Had his own TV show for a little while. Then he was like reoccurring on the Arrowverse with like Green Arrow show, then like Legends of Tomorrow, and then of course DC animated films. He always voiced Constantine himself, so he really like embodies the character and does like a fantastic job. I really love Matt Ryan. But he pulls the social demon out, transfers it, into this large mirror, and tosses it out the window, where it crashes on top of Chaz's taxi that he drives. And this kind of confuses John, figuring like this is a soldier demon, a full-fledged demon that's trying to cross over using like a human body, and it's like that's not supposed to happen because there's a treaty between heaven and hell where, as John will go over later on in the film, is that like nobody, no one side's supposed to tip the balance. They use like influence peddlers, like pretty much like half breeds, whereas like some with the angel's touch or some with the demon's touch that kind of influence people into doing good or evil. But no direct contact. That's the rule. So the fact that like a full-fledged demon was trying to come out on the plane when instead of like a half breed doing their dirty work, then that's a balance tip. So he's talking with his priest friend he has named Hennessy, and he takes this charm necklace from him. Well, not take it from him, but it's like he takes it off of him and put it in his pocket, is in Hennessy's coat pocket, saying like, I need you to use your skills to like kind of like scribing, using like some kind of, I guess, some kind of kind of psychic, but not so. It's kind of like, because you see him like pouring over these tons of newspapers using his fingers, and he's like kind of like a medium in a way. It's like trying to like do some kind of search for him, because find some kind of leads. But I guess the charm kind of blocks him, but also protects him from like threats kind of situation. So John ends up going to heading out to the doctor's office, who this doctor tells him about like his cancer from all these years of smoking. He became more aggressive, and he got at least at the most a year to live. And this kind of puts kind of some urgency to him, because well, I'll get to like as to why later on, but you get to meet Rachel Weisz's character, what's her name again? Angela Dodson, a police detective of Los Angeles, and she is called to the scene because she has a twin sister who was institutionalized, who jumped off the roof of the building, killing herself. And she, going over the body, and she bumps into Constantine, who didn't hold the elevator door for her. But then she bumps into him again at this church while she's trying to speak to the priest there that, she personally knows, trying to give her sister a proper, funeral, and considering it's a suicide, and, Catholicism, the rules of Catholicism is that suicides automatically go to hell. So it's, like, the figure there's no point in going all this like song and dance about it. Well, I wouldn't say song and dance, but it's just like, that, and I'm pretty sure after some time since then, because I'm pretty sure that was like, or at least in some circles today, is the case that, hardcore Catholics, see suicide as, damnable immediately, but personally, because I'm a Christian, I mean, like, Christian Catholicism is like, it's hand in hand kind of situation. But it's like, personally, I like to think, and it's just my own take on it, personally, I like to think that, which I'm pretty sure, like, a lot of, priests and ministers, whatever, will still do the ceremony for anybody who dies. It's just like a proper ritual that every person had done across the world. It's like it has to, it's like it has to be a thing. It's more so for the living than it is for the dead. But I personally think that God would, who's all knowing and very, omnipotent and omniscient, will understand a circumstance where it's not just somebody who just jumping off because they think it's fun to do, or let's see like what would happen, or just casually throwing it away. This is like a scenario where it's like, because you live right now, she was being like kind of like haunted or being chased, or or suspected of being used for demonic purposes. So at least in this film, like, despite all that, she still committed like a sin and she went to hell. But realistically, at least in my mind, I doubt in a circumstance like that, God would just like, okay, this is a extenuating circumstance. I cannot, in good conscience, this is me on my human level thinking, don't know how divine, would put it, but it's like I would like to believe that God would understand the extenuating circumstance and make certain exceptions to the rule, him himself. He is God, after all. He can make the exception, all things considering. But while she's speaking with the father, Constantine speaks with Gabriel, played by Tilda Swinton, who is a half-breed instead of the actual Archangel Gabriel, but they kind of play fast and loose with that here, because Gabriel is an archangel historically, but this is like a half-breed, like an influence peddler, and he's trying to convince her to give him an extension on his life. In exchange, he'll still do more work, for the side of the angels. And she's like, no can do. It's like, you're trying to buy your way into heaven. That's not how it works. And it's like, just because you know is not the same thing as believing. This faith and knowing is two different things. And, I'm sorry, you're fucked. You are going to hell because of the life you took. Despite your, the stuff that you did on our side. But then, after he leaves, John ends up getting jumped by this demon made up of bugs, but he kicks, that demon's ass, then goes meet with Papa Midnight. Another, well, in the comics, is like an ally slash rival slash enemy, depending on how Papa Midnight is written. There's is formerly like a voodoo doctor. Is that what is it called, right? Witch doctor, voodoo doctor, but played by Daimon Hansu. Daimon Hansu, who you would know him as like that from Guardians of the Galaxy, like that who? It's like, at the start it's like, I'm Star-Lord. Who? That guy. You've seen him in a fair bit of stuff over the years. He's a great character actor. He because he owns this nightclub where he's like swore he swore made an oath to stay neutral, not to play for one side or the other, unless one side tips the balance too heavily. So he has a nightclub where a bunch of half breeds, angels and demons, like kind of like it's kind of like Switzerland, where it's like no infighting in this club. Leave the grudges at the door. You're here, you're under my care and everything like that, but don't get out of line. Kids rules law in this club. So he went to go see Papa Midnight, mentioning that about the soldier demon, and it's like uh, he mentioned about this chair he needs to use, just to trying to this chair that's been used to who was used in Sing Sing prison to electrocute a lot of inmates to death. And he probably midnight said like, no, it's like, aside from the fact that it's going to absolutely kill you, might absolutely kill you, it's like I cannot play sides. So that's a no. And then like you meet up with like Beelzebub or Balthazar, another half breed who has an in for John, but they can't go at it because you're in Papa Midnight's place. John leaves to go home, and he meets up with Angela, who had a vision, or at least while she was pouring over security cameras of her sister's death, which I'm shocked considering that it's her relative, and it's kind of like normally in like a police investigation, from what I've seen in like movies and documentaries and all this other stuff, it's like you're too close to it, you're not going to be working a case that has any personal effect to you, because you won't be impartial. Or at least in this case, they dubbed it like a suicide. But she gets like a vision of her sister whispering the word Constantine, and she finds John. She tells him like there's no way her sister, a Catholic, jumps off the roof, and she doesn't believe that. Something got to her because she always saw things and everything like that, and something or someone got to her. And John dismisses her and plays to the role of John Constantine pretty good, because John Constantine is a just downright asshole sometimes. And so as she's leaving, John sees like winged demon bat things, traveling past his window, going to her direction. So he dips out, and then he explains to her, like, what if I told you that God and devil made a rager for the souls of humanity, and the rules are like no direct contact, and who's to say as to why they chose to do this? Maybe it was just for fun. And she rebuffs him and says like, people do bad things. It is not the work of the devil, because like, like you think that would be fun. Like, it was fun for a man to be his wife. It's fun for a woman to drown her own baby. Is people, John, not the devil. And John's like, yeah, sometimes people can do horrible, shitty things, but there are other times where something else gives us a little nudge in a certain direction. And she makes a comment like, I don't believe in the devil. Well, you should. He believes in you. And then that's when they, starting to get like, because it's like the street was just, this is LA. When I was, thinking it over today, when I was like planning on doing my spoiler review, I'm thinking like New York or something. Like, it was very weird for this scene to be being New York. It's like, no, it's not New York, it's Los Angeles. But even still, like a street on an LA street to be completely barren for some reason, and then all the lights go dim. Not one person. Because as John was running to catch up with her, and then he stops at her car, which she parks pretty dang far away. like at least like a few blocks, and all of a sudden, like, there's nobody on the street. And I thought that was like a weird, obviously it's like a very hocus pocus kind of situation where it's like, all of a sudden this barren area. But then they get attacked by these winged beasts. With John's quick thinking, wraps his bandage, wraps his hand with some like cloth and douses it with something and lights it up on fire, and this bright light shines, destroying like all the winged demons. Then she's at least a little bit more convinced now, and using her cat and like a tray full of water, he sticks his feet in the water and holds the cat and stares at it while she's exiting the room. And this is a funny little line here, and people don't think like there's any kind of like levity to this, or it's nothing fun here having. It's some fun it's having in this film. One being the fact that she's kind of like thinking this whole thing is ridiculous, and she makes a comment like, "Won't you need some lit candles and like a Ouija board or something?" And you make a comment like, "Why? Do you have any?" And it gave me a chuckle. I gotta admit that was pretty doggone like spot on timing. So she exits the room and I recall from The Mummy how like it was mentioned. If you check out my Mummy review, Brendan Fraser's Mummy review up on the channel, links are in the description, that he made a mention that the cats are like guardians of the underworld. So it kind of makes sense the way John utilizes cat, where he stares in the cat's eyes, hyper focused, and it's kind of like in feet in water, kind of like as he mentions, like it's kind of like a lubrication in a way to like pass through the thin membrane between the earthly plane into the hellish plane, and like using like the cat as like a kind of like a Chiron on the river Styx. It's like a passageway, like to make the transition flow, I guess. But and it's like a brilliant done cinematography. Like, obviously CG, but it's kind of like it's like the real world, but it's kind of like gone through some kind of like apocalypse, like a neutron blast hit through centuries ago, and it's like it's kind of like it's all torn up and rusted, and everything's red and black, and it's like this is the surface area, mind you, as John's like walking down this barren street, or he thinks it's barren. It's like a few little scavenger demons lurking behind the shadows as he's walking, and trying to catch up to Elizabeth, Angela's sister. And you get a little short shot as the camera pans down below him, and you see it's kind of like Dante's Inferno in a way, where it's like you see all these different circles. He's on like the safer level, ironically, and this is probably where lesser sins are put here, as not as bad as like full-blown murder, or like child molestation or something like that. This is like the light on the totem pole kind of stuff. But below that, you see like all these souls screaming and everything like that, and they just getting ripped apart by all these like demons. It's only brief, but it's like very well shot. A nice interpretation of like what they think like hell is. And John, runs with like a little like kind of like a glass ornament kind of stuff filled with holy water, and like he's trying to catch up and catch this like name tag wristband thing from Elizabeth, as because she's damned to keep perpetually falling to her death on this level. But she tosses her wristband thing to Constantine as he smashes the holy water across him to essentially wake him up out of hell. But he managed to hold on to the tag, so he brings it back with him, showing Angela like, yeah, she's in hell. I have proof, and you see like the tag is like kind of like burnt around the edges, showing that like it's been in hell. And I thought that was pretty damn cool. Uh, and as they are eating later, to I guess John needs to regain his strength because it's like I guess time in hell really saps you, uh, which stands the reason why like certain things like TV shows like if you ever watched the TV show Lucifer, formerly on Fox but then on Netflix, where a guy who is managed to escape from hell is like like starving, always like eating something because like there's no food, definitely no water. It's like like it's like you're almost like your soul's malnourished or something, like because you've been through like like horrific stuff, and he's like pretty much trying to replenish himself. Anyway, he goes over to Angela about like his history, the fact that when he's young, he had like this kind of gift, or in his mind, a curse, where he's always seeing like, demons and half breeds and all this other stuff everywhere, and like nobody knew what to do with that, and he kind of like felt like he was going nuts, and nobody was helping him, or nobody even believed him. So he figured like after when he, I guess got a little older, like around teenager, he committed suicide. He tried to commit suicide by slitting his wrist, but he's only been dead for like 2 minutes before he was revived. But in those 2 minutes, he was officially dead, and he was in hell. And as he mentions, like 2 minutes in hell is long enough. I remember from the TV show Supernatural, whereas like they mentioned that an hour on Earth is like a day in hell, and it's so you can get like a scope of like the time. It works differently in the afterlife compared to the real world. So, but he was still officially dead, and by the rules, he's destined to go to hell because the life he took, which was his own. So, from that point on, he decided to like become this occultist who, where he deports certain demons, mostly demons, back to hell or any other supernatural monsters. And that's when like Hennessy, at the same time, Hennessy find out about like this little factoid about what's been going on behind the scenes as to why this soldier demon coming out of nowhere, knowing full well that he's not supposed to be on the earthly plane. And of course, Balthazar, is slowly approaching him, and he's running without his little charm thing to protect him. And then it's like he was drinking himself silly, and then it appears like nothing's coming out of the bottles, but like to outside looking in, he's drowning himself. And before he's dying, he ends up using his charm to cut a symbol on his hand, and Elizabeth answered the call, and it's like she's the only one on call. It's like whatever, but she gets there with Constantine. Like Constantine's like just shaking a bit, or at least he plays it cool, but inside he obviously like shaking. He's like, why didn't you call me, you idiot? But he finds this little symbol. It's kind of like a circle with an X on it. So he goes call B-Man his other like associate, who hands him he's like the Q to his James Bond, gives him all his gadgets, like this stick thing that kind of like shoots out what you call dragon fire, and the little ornaments filled with holy water and so forth. Uh, um, uh, they go back to uh, 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 the sister, Angela's sister's room, and after realizing that uh, Angela also had to give a second powers like her sister that ended up causing her to get committed because no one believed her all-seeing eye kind of situation. And she left clues for Angela to find, and one of them is like a line, like kind of like a passage, like in like a Bible, but it's not the Christian Bible. It's the Hell's Bible, like a passage from Hell's Bible that B-Man looked up for them, and it mentions how like as a prophecy, and these kind of things is always some kind of prophecy that the son of the devil will rise with the assistance of the divine, pretty much, and they need like a powerful psychic. So that's why the sister killed herself, because she didn't want to be. She realized what was going on, and she didn't want to be used to bring the Antichrist on Earth. So she ended up killing herself in that process, forcing Mammon, which is the symbols that was carved, meanings like the symbol for Mammon. So Mammon had to like change his approach and utilize the sister who had latent psychic abilities, which John inadvertently reawakened just to further find out like what happened to B-Man, because he ended up getting killed by Balthazar. But then he finds Balthazar in like a cool scene where it's like, he just kicks the guy's ass, and then in like just a cool way, just to get him to like spill his guts to see what was going on. He's like performing last rites and everything like that, and it's like, I will not send you to hell. I will send you to heaven if you don't tell me what I need to know. And it's like, you don't want to be that demon who arrives on the footsteps of heaven. That ain't gonna work out well for you, and they won't play nice. So he tells him what you need to know, and then there's like a funny little moment where John's like, we gotta ask for forgiveness if you want, you want to enter, the last rites and everything like that. But then this unseen force kills Balthazar, and then force pulls her from the building that they were in into God knows where. He goes to Papa Midnight, and with his help, uses the chair to figure out where Angela is, and then is back at the hospital. And with Chaz's help, managed to whoever demons that was in the building, they put they bless the tank that holds the water for the sprinkler system, and when Constantine ignites it, it pretty much starts like acid for these demons that's like held up here waiting for Mammon to arise, and then Constantine utilizing this golden like cross shotgun thing, and just starts like blast. It kind of reminds you, if you want to get a general idea what it looked like, it's kind of like the first Blade movie, where he's coming into this club at the beginning of the film and starts kicking all these, like shooting all these vampires. Constantly pretty much doing the same thing, but with the demons. And as they are trying to, him and Chaz trying to exorcise my mom from the body, the unforeseen force ends up killing Chaz, and it turns out to be Gabriel, who completely losing her mind, saying like how she was pretty much, in a way she was jealous of humanity and their ability to just repent which is a lot of people's complaint, at least, just not with certain people who had questions about all that, because it is a legit kind of like question. It's like, oh, like, child murderers and like, wife beaters and people who done like abhorrent things can just repent, at the last bit of their life and all's forgiven kind of thing. And I honestly, people, you think God, who knows people's hearts through and through, will be fooled or at least thinking like, oh, look, let's let them win. No, it's obviously he has like, okay, that's what like at least I think the whole point of the whole purgatory thing is meant for. It's like, if you're truly sorry, but you still did some fucked up stuff, you're not going to be that easy. The purpose of purgatory is like, either like you didn't do that much good, but you didn't do evil either. You go here and you do certain tasks, and you will eventually get the access to that. At least you get the chance to get into heaven, unless you feel until you fulfill these kind of like obligations here in purgatory. And it's the same thing for like people who probably were repentful at the end of their life, despite the horrid things they probably did, like child murders or whatever the case may be. And it's like, okay, you will have to do these kind of tasks. That's if you look up the purpose of purgatory and like if you Google it or whatever like that, you get to see like, okay, this is the purpose of that, just to get those kind of people to actually essentially do time in purgatory, and then once the task is complete or the time was served, essentially, then like, okay, I see that you're fully repentant truly now, come on into heaven kind of situation. While people in hell are just in hell. That is done deal at that point. But Gabriel is pretty much like, jealous, like, oh, you get to repent at the end, and God welcomes you into his bosoms. That's not right. So I want to make you worthy. I'm going to bring hell on earth, and those bits of humanity that are left standing are the ones who are truly worthy of his love. I'm going to make you truly worthy of it. So she causes this whole machinations to get Mammon into the world to bring hell on earth, so that way, humanity can rise up in a way. And she tosses Constantine to the side, and after at first trying to plead to God to like intervene on this thing, because it's like all hands on deck kind of situation, no response. So it's like, okay, fuck it. And then he slits his own wrist, killing himself, which brings Lucifer to him, which he's the only person that, as mentioned many times in this film, John's the only soul that Lucifer himself will come on earth to come collect. And he tells Lucifer, like, your kid's over in the next room with Gabriel, and he's about to usurp you. You need to handle that. That's why I even about to try to kill myself a second time, knowing for what will had like not make that same mistake twice. And Lucifer, of course, is played by Peter Stormare. Yeah, Stormare. And he sends his son back to hell, and Gabriel, trying to smite him, all her power is gone now. Given the fact that God knows what she was doing or about to do, and cut that access quick. And Lucifer burns off her wings and, tosses her aside. And then Lucifer, assuming that John just wants an extension for like keeping his son from trying to usurp his power, but instead, John's like, no, send Isabel to heaven, then that's and we'll call it even on that one then. And he, Lucifer agrees. He starts dragging John with him, and then all of a sudden, like, he got a little bit heavier and heavier and heavier until he started digging up the ground, which is like an awesome cinematic little moment. I don't think anybody really talks about that moment. It's like, I like that this whole dragging things, like Lucifer a supreme being, at least one of a supreme being, is probably like supernatural strength, mind you, is having a tough time dragging a human body because it's digging up the ground at this point, and come to realize that he doesn't have access or claim to this soul anymore because John made a selfless act, for the first time in a while. And, since he's dying, he's floating into heaven, flipping him off flipping off Lucifer at the same time, which is always gives me a laugh. And just the fact that it's Keanu Reeves is doing this just makes it a whole lot funnier. But then Lucifer, not wanting to be one up, stops John, takes away his cancer so he can pretty much live, and hoping that at some point he will screw up again so he will have access to him again. So later on, Elizabeth and John talk. He hands her the Spear of Destiny, tells her, like, look, you hide it somewhere where nobody can find it, not even me. And, there's a couple of times in this film where these two look like they're about to kiss or whatever like that, or share like any kind of like a romantic moment. And it's like, and they don't go there. And I respect the hell out of that. And it's like, just like this and the first Blade movie, where it's like the two movies that I can even think of where they don't follow the same creed as like almost any other movie in the world does, where it's like there's a man, there's a woman, or two men or two women, is like, and they have to be together. And it's like, you don't have to do that. It can just be like a simple story, and they don't have to be romantically involved. They can just maybe like hints of attractiveness, but they don't go there. It's like, we got a job to do, we need to do it. There's no time for the whole romance BS. And it's like, God, I respect the heck out of that, and I love that part of this movie. I love this movie about that. Later on, post-credit scene is like one of those rare post-credit scenes in superhero movies that I never knew about until like maybe like 3-4 years ago. Oh no, not 3-4 years ago. I knew about it long enough but it was like 3 or 4 years ago when I actually saw it, for myself. I think it's gonna be longer than that. It took a while before I eventually found out about it and then saw it for myself. But John's at Chaz's grave. He puts his lighter on top of it, on top of the grave. He's fully like committed to like nicotine gum now because he's trying to just make some different life choices, where he's not going to smoke anymore. He's going to avoid, smoking, so you don't have to get cancer again or anything like that. He want to like make sure he try to at least clean enough life, while he's doing this job. And the angel of Chaz comes down, smiles at him. I think he takes the lighter off his tombstone and flies back up to heaven. And then the movie ends. And I gotta tell you, man, it's like I can see like where people are coming from, why some might not care for this movie or might find it like very low tier Keanu Reeves film, but like I said, it's a cult classic. I think a lot more people like it than hate it, and it's pretty fun. It's like just see Keanu Reeves just badassing it up and just like everybody's acting their ass off, even like to a certain extent Shia LaBeouf. I mean, it's like I imagine, even though some people might complain like it doesn't look like people are like having really like having a good time at this kind of thing. I think they were having a good time. It's just like I guess they were like so used to certain comic book movies to have some bit of levity or fun or charm to it, but I think there's charm to this, and there's certain funny moments in this. It's very subtle, but this is me who've seen this movie like lots of times growing up. But I guess I don't even want to call it like a B movie, but I'll give it like a letter, a solid B. It's it's an enjoyable movie. It's like well above average. But yeah, that is Constantine. I figure next week, I got at least one. Yeah, I got 5 more Keanu Reeves movies I want to tackle before like I move on to starting my Star Wars film and TV show reviews before the May the 4th comes out. But yeah, next week I'll be going over 47 Ronin and Destination Wedding, another 2 Keanu Reeves films, and I'll give you my thoughts on those films. But I'd like to thank you all for joining me. I will see you guys next time for more movie reviews, and I believe I'm pretty sure by this weekend I'll have my JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Season 2 spoiler review at the ready to talk about. And tomorrow I will be going over my first Spider-Man comic book review. At least the new comic book review of the new year will be tomorrow. So look forward to that. And I will see you guys soon. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And I will see you guys soon. Peace.